Hey everybody. So we've got a great show coming up for you today. It's only a week until the Royal Rumble. I've got a co-host with me, Anthony DeMarco, to cover everything that's been going on in the lead up to the Royal Rumble next Sunday night. And boy, do we have a lot to cover, including SmackDown, what happened on Raw, what could happen at the Royal Rumble as things begin to come into focus, and of course, what that can mean for WrestleMania. So a ton of content that we cover, as always, a great conversation. So you're going to want to stay tuned for that. And we're going to get that all started right after a word from our sponsor and then right into the show, guys. Stay right here. You're not going to want to miss this one.
Welcome to the WWE Podcast, your place for the most passionate wrestling analysis on the web.
Just turn Roman heel. What is WWE waiting for?
When other wrestling podcasts put you to sleep, you can count on the WWE Podcast to keep you engaged and asking for more.
I've been watching wrestling for over 20 years, and that was one of the best matches I've ever seen.
This is unlike any other wrestling analysis. So without any further delay, let's get the show started right now.
Hey guys, welcome to the WWE Podcast. It is Sunday, January 19th, 2020. Thank you so much for joining me. And we got a great show for you, as I alluded to in the very open here. A great conversation with Anthony as we talked about everything this week in WWE, including in-depth Rumble thoughts, and gave our picks. I know it's not our prediction show, but sometimes you just got to go with the flow, and I don't think our picks are going to surprise anybody, but we gave those and looked forward to WrestleMania and beyond, including questions like, what are they going to do with Baron Corbin? What are they going to do with Bray Wyatt, with Roman Reigns? Who could face Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania? We covered so many different questions and really dove in deep to a lot of topics, including Sheamus and where he could be positioned on SmackDown post-WrestleMania and at WrestleMania. So a lot of great content, a lot of potential storylines and ideas and theories and conspiracy theories and all that kind of stuff, all that great stuff that we love doing as wrestling fans. We covered here. And we even touch on the women's division, of course, and what that could mean for the Rumble and a possible major return at the Rumble that's been rumored that him and I both agree on. So really, we covered everything that we deemed relevant. And yes, we didn't get to every little nuance that's happening in WWE. If you guys want a 5-hour, 6-hour podcast, we could. But it's a great conversation, and I hope you enjoy it. And we're going to get to it, of course, in just a moment here. But first, if you guys haven't joined us before, thank you so much for giving us a try, as we know there are many other shows out there. It seems as if you don't have a podcast, you're not relevant, right? Podcasts seem to be the new .com era. The podcasts are easy to get into, but hard to stay. And I hope that this is a podcast that continues to progress and continues to evolve and to improve over the next year or so. I know that looking at some of the feedback, some of you love it, some of you hate it, and those of you that don't like it, I understand the ads can be a problem. But I would always say, hey, check out Patreon. My Patreon feed at patreon.com/WWE podcast. And there you can get an all ad-free experience. And I would also like to welcome our latest and newest patron, Estafina Ramirez. So Estafina, I hope I pronounced that. I'm really sorry if I didn't pronounce that right. I'm awful with pronouncing things, but thank you so much for joining the show, and I hope you enjoy your complete ad-free experience. And you get a video podcast that's not delivered anywhere else except for your eyes only on patreon.com/WWE podcast. If you'd like to join her and get yourself in, it's easy to do. You guys know the address. And get yourself in there. And exclusive content, as I said, video is released every week for your viewing pleasure. So, I mean, again, I'll probably be doing more video and adding video to this feed eventually. But there will always be remaining exclusive content at Patreon, right? So head on over there if you like this podcast in its entirety. And I'd really encourage you to do that. But if not, you can always head on over to any podcast app and rate and review the show. That's always a good thing. And if you guys just want to bitch about the show, hey, that's what it's for. But I'd encourage you to leave a 5-star rating and review. It does help out the show and everything like that. Even if you give a negative review, it doesn't really hurt the show because you're still reviewing the show. So I'd prefer that you give positive feedback. But you know what? If you like something, I encourage you to do that. If you don't, just shoot me an email and say, hey, this sucks, right? I don't like this part of your show. I don't like this or how you do this. I'm open to criticism, okay? I don't take anything personally. You guys can come and go as you please listening to this show and any other show for that matter. So I am open to all of those things, and email me at realwwepodcast@gmail.com or hit me up on Twitter at the WWE or the WWE Podcast on Twitter. Okay, well guys, with all of that being said, I have a great conversation with Anthony. It ran well over an hour and a half, right? We just continued to talk, and that's because we love wrestling, great chemistry, and a good guy. So I hope you enjoy the conversation. And a big next week coming up. This week will be your typical review shows on the schedule of Tuesday Raw, Wednesday Wrestling Nostalgia, which I'm doing a 3-part series on The Rock versus Stone Cold Steve Austin from WrestleMania 15, 17, and 19. So it's going to span over 3 weeks, and I'll do 15, 17, and 19 in that order. And Thursday and Friday will be NXT AEW. Saturday will be my prediction show with none other, of course, than Ashley. So she will be returning to the show on Saturday as we get ready for the Rumble and give our official final predictions for the Royal Rumble event. And then, of course, Sunday will be the Royal Rumble itself, and I'll be tweeting throughout the show. I'll be actually watching that show live, and then huge show coming Monday and or Tuesday where I'm going to bring the entire panel of co-hosts together. So Ashley, Anthony, and Mary are going to join me early next week for a massive review show for the Rumble, where you'll get all of our views on what the Rumble provided, our good, our bad, our rants. Everything will be there in what's proven and probably will be what's proving to be a long duration show, probably hour and a half, 2 hours. I mean, this thing, I have a feeling with all of our opinions and everything else, it's going to be a blast. So I'm really excited to bring on the entire cast of our co-hosts. I know we have our hosts of the show, and we'll be doing something special with them down the line. But our co-hosts, I'm going to want to bring on, and we're going to discuss all of the Royal Rumble fallout. So that's going to be just crazy. So I can't wait for that. So that'll be happening in early next week. All right, guys. So I'm going to take a quick break, and then on the other side, it's all Royal Rumble talk and current WWE talk. So stay right here, and we'll be right back. Following this, we'll be right into the conversation with Anthony.
Hello, friends. I'm Henrik Kuto, host of Weekly Spooky, the podcast that brings you just a little bit of fear every single week, with narrated scary stories and creepy ambience to boot that helps you keep the Halloween spirit alive 52 weeks out of the year. So tune into Weekly Spooky at weeklyspooky.com or anywhere you listen to podcasts. And please don't forget, listen in the dark. It's more fun that way.
Alrighty, welcome to the Royal Rumble week. Well, the week before the Rumble, if you will. 1 week from tonight, we will all be enjoying the countdown from 10 and counting in unison to see who comes out next. I'm excited for this because it's my favorite pay-per-view of the year. It seems to be all of my co-hosts' favorite pay-per-view of the year, and I'm thinking the majority of my listeners have been chiming in as well and saying that they love this pay-per-view even more than WrestleMania due to its marathon type of format. So this is exciting. I'm looking forward to it. Anthony DeMarco, welcome back to the show. Are you excited for the Rumble week?
Oh, yeah, so excited. I actually watched Royal Rumble 2001 today, which was Steve Austin's third Royal Rumble victory. So I'm getting hyped for it. Yeah, exactly. Watching some nostalgic matches, and yeah, I'm really hyped for the Rumble.
Oh, man, that's so funny you bring that up. I was thinking about how awesome that Rumble is. Because I remember that it came down to Kane and Stone Cold Steve Austin, and he ended up having to give him like 3 chair shots before he could knock him over the rope. So yeah, man, that was a badass pay-per-view, a badass ending that led to this Stone Cold versus The Rock at 17. So, yeah, boy, that gives me chills as well. So this is what the Rumble's about. It's about you don't know who's coming out next. It's a ingenious, brilliant format that was developed, and it's great for returns. It's great for debuts. It's great to set up rivalries that follow all the way to WrestleMania, in mini matches and stories within stories, as we mentioned last week. So I'm pumped for this match. And since we last talked, do you have any? I'll just ask you straight out. Have you adjusted your thinking to who could win this match, or is it pretty much in line with what you've been thinking all along?
Well, to be frank, the short answer is it hasn't changed my thinking. I think that it's going to be Roman Reigns. I think he's on a collision course with The Fiend for all the reasons I mentioned last week. There not being a big challenger other than him for The Fiend beyond Daniel Bryan, how he's been booked so strongly as of late, and just Vince McMahon's obsession to push him to the top at all costs. But in saying that, I do think that they are dropping more clues to maybe possibly sway us in another direction. And I think one guy that I've been in favor of as the favorite, if it were up to me, would be Drew McIntyre. I've said it numerous times before that if I could have a wish, it would be for him to win the Rumble, babyface turn, and head against Brock at WrestleMania. And I think they've just loosened up his character a bit. You can see he's kind of having more babyface antics, or at least more of a funny heelish character as opposed to just the stern monster type. But given the fact that Brock is in the Rumble, I think that maybe they will have an interaction in the match that leads to the main event at Mania. But as far as who's going to win the Royal Rumble, I think it's still going to be Roman Reigns.
Yeah, so the short answer of mine is yes. The short answer is that I think it's all roads lead to Roman Reigns, as they have for the last 5 years. All roads lead to Roman Reigns, and I just don't see another way around it. And so again, my consistent thinking is just that, consistent, that Roman Reigns, again, if he wins the Rumble, that's not going to be a surprise. He's an extremely heavy favorite among betting sites and fans alike. And so if Roman Reigns wins, okay, he wins, and we get The Fiend and Roman Reigns. If he doesn't, I still think it's The Fiend versus Roman Reigns. We discussed that there's 2 paths to the main event of WrestleMania on each respective brand. But that's an interesting concept, right? You have Drew McIntyre, a guy that has been hot and cold, has been heel since his return to WWE, and now is kind of back to this tweener and sort of hinting towards babyface. I would love to see a Drew McIntyre babyface turn. My concern with him actually winning the Rumble is that they haven't shown any consistency, WWE, in actually booking this guy long-term in terms of looking at it from could be a top guy. They've been very hot and cold, start-stop. So I don't have any faith that they would pull this off because there hasn't been a whole lot of groundwork set for it, other than this past week showing a little bit of a babyface, and he gets the big win in the triple threat against AJ and Randy. If this was a month build or a 2-month or 3-month build, I'd have more confidence that they had this idea. But this kind of feels like maybe a little bit too little, too late. And I would love to see it. I just don't, based on the booking over the last 5-6 months, I just don't have the faith.
Yeah, I'm with you. And it's, look at the history of the Rumble. Like Seth last year, everyone felt it was coming for a good 2-3 months. The year before that, Shinsuke Nakamura was an under-the-radar pick, but they have been quietly building him for quite a while. Typically, the Royal Rumble winner is like a big-time payoff for a lot of momentum gain in the months leading up to it. But to your point, Drew McIntyre, it's not far off that you saw him just beating on guys like Ryder and Hawkins. Like, he's only been kind of pushed back into relevancy since the calendar flipped to 2020. That being said, I still think he could end up against Brock. Like you mentioned, there's 2 paths to the main event of WrestleMania because of the brand split. And then you look at Roman Reigns, and it's just like it's been almost a calendar year now of strong booking, put in a position to succeed, put him against guys who are bona fide heels and won't get the cheers over him. And again, like he was in 4 consecutive main events at WrestleMania, but wasn't there last year for his health reasons. Like, Vince McMahon wants to get him back there. The Fiend doesn't have an opponent beyond Roman Reigns after he's done with Daniel Bryan. And even other guys who I thought maybe could have been candidates for how they're being booked have cooled down a lot. Like, Kevin Owens was a guy who I thought had a legitimate shot. And while I do, for the most part, really love what's going on Raw right now, and I think it's the best the product has been, and I could honestly say probably close to 10 years in this short sample size. But I think Kevin Owens has really cooled off lately, and that even more so backs up my thought that it will be Roman Reigns.
Yeah, I think we can talk till we're blue in the face about other guys that deserve it more or could be a better potential fit for the main event, and it just makes no sense ultimately when you just come back full circle and go, well, it kind of has to be Roman. As you said, they have done a lot of building over the last several months, all the way back to summer, of him being the guy that is in line for the main event of WrestleMania against The Fiend. I just don't see another way around it, and there's just nobody else on SmackDown. You said it. It's Daniel Bryan, who's kind of second in command, and it's Roman Reigns, who is the top guy, and it's the top guy that should face the champion at WrestleMania. And I don't see another way around it, as much as we may come up with these theories and ideas. I'm not saying it's impossible, but man, there's a lot of work to get there, and I don't think that WWE would say to themselves, well, man, we've done a lot with Roman over the last 7 months. What are we going to do if we don't put him in the main event, right? So unfortunately, I don't see a road out of this. And as far as Kevin Owens goes, you're right. He was hot for a while. Shane McMahon did him a disservice. That whole program really, really hurt him, especially when it went, 2 months too long, and it just continued and continued. And we're like, God Almighty, enough. Stop the pain, get him to a real opponent. He truly turns face. But I think that Kevin Owens on Raw is, instead of being that solo top guy, he's sharing the space with guys like Samoa Joe now. It's just not a focal point. There's not one guy at the top of the food chain in line to face Brock Lesnar, which is why he kind of feels like he's cooled off, because he's no longer the focus of the show. He's sharing the spotlight.
Yeah, and I'll reiterate that the product right now, for the most part, is top-notch, especially Raw. It's hard to find something right now about Monday Night Raw that I dislike. SmackDown has been adequate. I don't think it's been bad, but you can see it's not quite on the level of Raw. Still kind of find its way. But, not to be negative, but you can really see the trickle-down effect the whole Fiend Seth Rollins angle has had in a negative fashion, because in my mind, it was too early to put the belt on the Fiend. And I was watching Raw this week, and I always kind of find it weird that like guys like Brock Lesnar and Seth Rollins have like these 8-month long programs, and then they cap it off at SummerSlam, and they're still in the same show, but they never cross paths anymore. And I know that you kind of have to suspend your disbelief with stuff like that, but I think that if you would have had Brock on SmackDown as WWE champion, like it was originally planned, and you kept Seth Rollins on Raw as the Universal Champion, and then started this faction, it would have been such a better payoff, because now you have the Fiend take the Universal belt to SmackDown, which I still think they called an audible on, because after Hell in a Cell, they kind of booked themselves into the corner where he had to beat Seth Rollins. But now you have, like you said, no one is a clear-cut guy for Brock Lesnar to face, and as a result, he's entered the Royal Rumble. And there's no clear-cut guy, because Seth, for all intents and purposes, is the top heel on Raw, and all the top baby faces are concerned with him. And then now on SmackDown, you're having to kind of rush to find a main event competitor for The Fiend at WrestleMania, and as a result, Roman Reigns is the only guy. So that's the one thing that I kind of looked at this week and said, man, if they wouldn't have done all that whole nonsense with Rollins and The Fiend, things may have been even better than what they already are. Man,
you said it. I mean, the temptation to go negative on this is very high. And I have buried Hell in a Cell. The entire WWE fan base has completely buried Hell in a Cell, and rightfully so. I never wanted to see The Fiend and Bray Wyatt well before the actual main event of Hell in a Cell happened and the disaster happened and the ripple effect of that is still going on now. Nobody wanted. I just didn't feel it. It felt way too soon. You said it. I didn't want to see the Fiend with the belt for a while. That made total sense too. And now, yeah, they're kind of in a situation that is Roman Reigns versus the Fiend. Where else you going? There's no one else on SmackDown that makes any sense for WrestleMania other than an NXT guy coming in. I'm not going to say call-up because it's not a call-up anymore. They're a legitimate third brand, but transferring or moving to the SmackDown brand and facing Brock Lesnar or facing the Fiend. So, this is kind of a foregone conclusion for all intents and purposes. So, but actually transitioning a little bit to this past week on SmackDown, Kane comes out at the beginning of the show. And they, as I predicted, and I don't think I'm a genius, it didn't take a genius to figure this out, that, it was going to be some kind of interaction with The Fiend and Daniel Bryan to temporarily have a nice feel-good moment of reuniting Team Hell No, and that was fine. I had no issue with that. Kane is, I think, going to be in the Royal Rumble match. And what did you think of that segment with Daniel Bryan ripping out part of the locks of The Fiend and then backstage saying that, the Fiend does what he does best when he's in trouble, and that's run, and then put the stipulation in that he's going to challenge him to a strap match. And even in, you think in Texas, they're going to be in Houston, they'd be at a Texas bull rope match, but no, it's just a strap match. So what did you think about that whole segment on SmackDown?
I like the segment. I like that what they've been doing with The Fiend, that he's, revisiting a rivalry with Daniel Bryan, and they've tied in what happened on the show 6 years ago when Bray Wyatt was there with the family. And then this week with Kane, he's had several run-ins with Kane. He attacked him as the Fiend. And then in Bray Wyatt's debut year, his first match was against Kane, I believe at SummerSlam in an Inferno match. So I like how they're tying in the history, and they're not just saying we all have the memory of the goldfish like Vince McMahon, WWE often does. I liked it. It set up a good segment with Daniel Bryan going over on him, getting a good feel-good story like you thought. I'm intrigued with this match, the strap match. I think that they're going down the road with a lot of gimmick matches for the Royal Rumble, which is fine. I'm a sucker for gimmick matches, and they have the Falls Count Anywhere match. Now they have the two Rumble matches. Now the bull rope match. I mean, not the bull rope, the strap match. And I think it's going to be a good match. Again, and this has been a trend on SmackDown going back to WrestleMania when Kofi was champion, that it's bothering me that the quote-unquote world champion of the show is taking second class to Roman Reigns and whatever story angle he is in. That's bothered me. I don't think we've seen the Universal title once on SmackDown, like physically. Like I know we see it on the Firefly Funhouse, but we haven't seen the belt once since, Bray was champion or has been champion. So besides the fact that I don't like it taking a back seat to Roman's angle, I thought all in all the segment itself was really good.
Definitely. It was a very solid segment. Again, SmackDown is just it's just a good, average to good show in most cases, where Raw is excelling and has been excelling for quite some time. Raw hasn't just been, the past couple weeks or month. It's been several months that Raw has been a very good show. So obviously, I think we can credit Paul Heyman, assumingly, to that consistent change, and maybe the XFL is taking away Vince's focus from being a complete hands-on approach. But credit to where credit's due on SmackDown. It was a solid segment. Daniel Bryan gets a little bit of retribution on the Fiend and pulls out some of his locks, and a pair of glasses came out of the bottom of the ring, which is weird. No one else mentioned that or noticed. I'm like, what the hell are a pair? Why are glasses on them? Obviously, that was a mistake. But yeah, so that was good as well. And I don't think that anyone really believes that Daniel Bryan's going to win at the Rumble. It's not a spoiler. It's just this one somewhat is a foregone conclusion as well. Because what are you going to have? Roman Reigns versus Bryan? We've already discussed that, I think, last week too. It just is not going to do Roman Reigns any favors if you want to get that babyface reaction for Reigns, which is he's already going to struggle anyway at WrestleMania, which I can't wait to see. But yeah, this is a match I'm looking forward to, because I think while Daniel Bryan may not win and probably won't, And I also am a little bit resentful again for WWE's just incessant need to make Roman Reigns the focus and put the belt second, put it underneath Roman Reigns. That's just what they've done, and they did it through the entire summer. But what I was going to say is that if you have the Fiend out there with Daniel Bryan loses, and I think he will, there should be something, I might have mentioned this already, but there should be some kind of hint to what the weakness of the Fiend is. They haven't revisited that yet, and Ramblin' Rabbit apparently is alive, so I think that you will see some kind of clue, even in Daniel Bryan's loss, to what that weakness could be that Roman Reigns could expose.
Yeah, I think that it will be exposed a bit, or like you said, at least like a hint, because I'm not sure is there 1 or 2 pay-per-views between Rumble and Mania?
2.
Okay, so they could still carry on this feud between Bray and Daniel Bryan theoretically. So I'm not really sure like if they're going to transition right into Roman Reigns. So maybe this is a slow burn with Daniel Bryan so that maybe they could, like have Daniel Bryan, maybe expose it a bit at the Royal Rumble and then it transition into the next pay-per-view. But I hope it is something that they carry out because to your point, the last time we talked, it is a very intriguing wrinkle in this whole storyline right now.
It is. And as we're talking about Roman Reigns, he faces Baron Corbin at the Royal Rumble, and Roman Reigns' stipulation is the most boring stipulation you could possibly come up with, and that probably would have been implemented, even if it wasn't left up to him, of a Falls Count Anywhere match, which does not benefit him, considering that Baron Corbin, who's done a brilliant job, by the way, who has these cronies that outnumber the Usos and Roman Reigns. So, I didn't understand that. If more logic would have told you, well, keep people out, let's do a cage match, right? I mean, we know people get in there, but from the wrestling perspective logic, you would have think Roman Reigns is like, hey, I'm tired of people interfering, I'm tired of, all that. Let's put you in a cage where you can't escape me. I mean, to me, that would have made more sense than a Falls Count Anywhere match that actually promotes guys that aren't in the match to be involved in the match. Nonetheless, you have Baron Corbin who, and again, I feel like I don't want to be a Debbie Downer because I'm looking forward to the match actually. And I think, again, Baron Corbin is the top heel on SmackDown. I love his work that he's done over the last several months in transforming into the King. He's really embracing it. But my concern is, I think we all believe that Baron Corbin's going to lose. And there are 2 pay-per-views in between now, or between Rumble and Mania. So this, as Daniel Bryan and The Fiend, could string out a little bit longer before they get to the true program that they're getting to at WrestleMania. But where does Baron Corbin go after he loses to Roman Reigns? I mean, all this progress they've made with Corbin, I love his heel persona. There's still work to do, but it's progress. What happens to Baron Corbin after Roman Reigns just takes him down and moves on to The Fiend?
I think the only logical scenario would be him matching up with Braun Strowman heading towards Mania. Because I think it's, at least for me, I'm fully expecting for Braun Strowman to win the Intercontinental Championship sooner rather than later from Shinsuke Nakamura. I love Nakamura. I love the group for the most part with Sami Zayn and Cesaro. But it's really run his course now as the mid-tier champion on SmackDown. He was the U.S. champion for an extended stretch last year when that belt was on SmackDown. Then as soon as the IC title came to the Blue Brand, he's held it for a good while now. I don't even remember who he took the belt from. I think it's been at least since the summer. So, and we've talked about it at length that we like Nakamura, but he's run his course as champ. I think Strowman's going to take it, and they'll pair him with Baron Corbin. They had a really good program last year around this time when they were both on Raw. They had good chemistry, and I think that's the only logical, immediate solution for Corbin beyond Roman Reigns.
I like that. Yeah, I think that is a great position for both guys, and Braun Strowman actually gets a true opponent at a WrestleMania rather than dealing with some foolish Saturday Night Live guys or having a 6-year-old be his tag partner or whatever kind of nonsense they want to throw him in with Tyson Fury. I'm tired of Braun Strowman being in these just nonsensical, comedic, cartoonish segments. I need Braun Strowman in a real program at WrestleMania. And I know Tyson Fury wasn't at WrestleMania, but my point is I need Braun Strowman in that. And that is a good position for him to actually win a championship. And I think it actually would benefit benefit Braun Strowman and ultimately benefit Baron Corbin, who I think needs a belt to go on a long run with and have his cronies to back him up and hold it for months and just build heat. So could Corbin win that at WrestleMania? I know we're like 3 steps ahead of ourselves, but I think Baron Corbin as Intercontinental Champion would be I would love it. I would love it. Honestly, I'd love him as the Universal Champion, but I don't think that's in the future, at least in the next 6 months. I like that. I'm with you on that. And this whole group, yeah, I love Sami Zayn. How can you not love to hate him? He comes out and just loses his mind over Shinsuke's music and is obnoxious. He's a great talker. He can take a bump. Same with Ziggler. This is a really underrated group of talent. And have they been positioned in the right way, they could be a top heel faction and kind of run parallel to Seth and the AOP and now Buddy Murphy, and maybe we'll get into that next. But there's just so much that they could do with this group. I don't think they understand what they have on their hands.
Yeah, I pretty much consider Zayn and Nakamura and Cesaro right now the what's the name of it? The OC of SmackDown. And I do find, and this is just me, and I know I'm just overly tough on him, but Cesaro is really goofy to me, and that I kind of always laugh when he comes out. And mostly just because he's changing his outfit and his gear from week to week and wearing a shirt that's 4 sizes too small, and just the fact that he doesn't have a personality. But all that aside, I like all of them. I think that they would just need to go in a different direction more as a group, as opposed to just Nakamura being the Intercontinental Champion and not holding it hostage, but kind of to an extent in terms of valuing the championship. I just think that belt would do Braun Strowman some good, as he hasn't held a singles championship in any capacity since joining WWE, and even eventually Baron Corbin post-WrestleMania. Because I'm pretty sure the only title that Corbin's ever held was the U.S. Championship for 2 or 3 months, and that was over 2 years ago now. So I just think that the IC Championship would be best served for some more high-level single opponents right now, or single wrestlers. And that's not any slight on Nakamura and Sami Zayn and Cesaro. I just don't think that there's any point, and nobody's really benefiting from the Intercontinental Championship being a part of that mix.
They're not, and they're doing a disservice. As talented as Nakamura is, I think some of the viewers have kind of forgotten that he's champion outside of Braun Strowman saying he deserves a shot. And he does, based on the fact that he has beaten Nakamura before. He holds several wins against him, so rightfully so. He should be next in line to win the Intercontinental Championship. I'm all for that. I just hope that after Nakamura drops the belt, this group doesn't disband. And I will say only if their next plan is, well, break them up, and Sami will do his separate thing, and Nakamura will do his separate thing, and Cesaro will do his separate thing, because we've seen them do their separate things, and it just hasn't been solid. It hasn't been really executed well. And like you said, Cesaro is a goofball, great in the ring, stupid strong, but goofy, right? That is a good way to describe him. He's just a goofball that you just don't know how to feel about him, because he's great, but you don't understand any gimmick he's ever done ever. So and Nakamura, obviously ultra talented. Sami Zayn to me is the star of that entire group. He's the mouthpiece. He's like the mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart, but except he's an actual performer that can go. I love what he's doing. So transitioning a little bit into what potentially can be coming down the line here, and we got a little bit more hint on SmackDown as well with the Revival continuing to lose, and they lost again. And what could this possibly mean? The Revival seem to be hinting at a potential change in character, gimmick. We're not sure, but the announcers hinted at it. The Revival themselves kind of alluded to some kind of change coming. What could this be?
I'm not sure what it could be, but I know they've been, kind of teasing the whole them leaving WWE for quite some time now, and even the Revival kind of teased it in their promo after their loss on SmackDown. But I think that's more just them playing to the storyline, especially the fact that they just re-signed with WWE. I've always been someone who's more bullish on the Revival than most. A lot of my friends who follow NXT and are hardcore wrestling fans in terms of the indies and the other promotions really were high on them because they're the old school wrestling tag team and they do the old style and they're real nostalgic tag team. But for me, I've never really connected with them. They kind of just feel stale. Like, okay, we get it that they're tough guys, and they're old school wrestlers, but beyond that, I don't find there's a lot of depth to their characters. And you can see it now that they're rapidly falling down the tag team depth chart on SmackDown. Like New Day is going head to head with John Morrison and The Miz right now, which figures to end up in a tag team title match at Royal Rumble. Then you get the Usos who just returned, Heavy Machinery. Then you kind of got to consider Ziggler and Robert Roode as a tag team at the same time. So I think the Revival should change. I think they don't really have a choice right now to change it up a bit in any capacity that they can, because they are kind of just becoming a forgotten face on SmackDown.
They are. And when you see them come out, and again, we all know how talented they are in the ring. That's not the issue. And their whole persona, their whole gimmick, if you will, is not having a gimmick. It's just being the old school guys that come out in their trunks and boots and are good chain wrestlers and old school hard hitting and don't do the flips and flops and all the 450 splashes and 1,000 suicide dives, that they actually just wrestle. And that's been their thing. And while that sounds ingenious of kind of in a way of your gimmick is not having a gimmick, it's just not translating well on TV. And even when they explicitly talk about how silly it is that we're in a New Year's Eve street fight or whatever it was, and they had to use Legos and stupid crap, and they were angry about that, and I was too. I'm kind of going, yeah, like this is childish, stupid crap. And for them to call that out on air I loved it. But there's just something not connecting, and I don't want them to go and do what Shorty G has done and be able to connect with the audience in your match. And that's actually building fan support. And then WWE goes, oh, this is working. Let's fix that. And they go and give him a stupid gimmick, which is now retrograding his progress. I don't want them to just put all this colorful stuff on them and give him a silly entrance. I don't know what the fix is. I'm not smart enough to figure out what they should do, but we all agree, and they agree online, and the announcers all agree that something needs to give.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought up Shorty G, because there are instances where it's the creative and not the wrestler. The writing is stupid, and Shorty G is stupid, and that's why people don't connect with him right now as they were when he was Chad Gable. With the Revival, it seems like one of those instances where they've been booked strongly. They've held the tag team titles, whether it be on Raw and SmackDown, I think, on at least 3 separate occasions now. They've constantly been amongst the best for the last calendar year. They're saying all the right things, as you just mentioned, calling out the stupidity and often the buffoonery type things they have to do with this cheesy, era or these New Year's Eve street fights or what have you. But it's just they're missing something. And maybe this is just an instance where it's on the actual wrestlers themselves. It's on the guys themselves to develop the characters. Because to be honest, I don't know how much stronger these guys can be booked by WWE than they already have. They've been on a losing streak as of late, but they've had 2 or 3 separate occasions where they are the legitimate top tag team on whichever respective brand they are at that time. So I think that they can't do anything too drastic with the Revival, because at the end of the day, it's not always the case. But in this particular instance, it is just on Dash and Dawson, and maybe just their execution has to be better.
There's no question. There's no question that it may be up to the wrestlers. As you said, though, I don't know what their contract status is. They've kind of been hinting at leaving for a while. I don't know if there's any truth to that, or if that's just storyline within storyline. But there's something that needs to change. Maybe if I was going to nitpick on their actual presentation, I'm not a fan of their entrance music. It's not exciting. It's got kind of a country flair to it. And even if you like country music, it's not an exciting jam. It doesn't do anything for me. It's not wrestling music. It's not wrestling entrance music. So maybe as simple as that, and changing up the attire a little bit. And I don't know, but I don't want them to do a Shorty G. They're getting over by wrestling. Let's fix that. It's almost as if WWE sees that and goes, no, that's not how they should get over. They should get over with this, this and that, and change them into this awful, just stomach churning type of, I embrace who I am. I could rant on that for an hour, so I'm not. But that's what I don't want. So I don't know what it means by finding themselves, whatever they have to do, but they are a good hand. They're great, and they're super talented. They have great chemistry. I like their motto, but they're not connecting, kind of like Cesaro has never connected. But he's hung around because he's so damn good in the ring. And he has still not found a gimmick. If you ask Cesaro, point blank, what is your mission? What's your mission statement? Who is Cesaro? We have no idea. Is he a Swiss Superman? Right? I don't know who he is.
Yeah, well, it's Cesaro. It's just going back to when he started. You had him being the translator. Then he became James Bond. Then he went to the bar. And then if that's not enough, since he disbanded from the bar, he's had so many gimmicks just over the last 9 months or so. Like, he started coming out in a jumpsuit. Then he changed to kind of like skinny sweatpants with short ankles with like that black coat over it. Now he's coming out in regular like wrestling trunks. And it's just a lot of these guys that they want to keep them on the show because they're so good in the ring, but they just really don't know what to do with them. And it sucks for Cesaro because look at a guy like Sheamus, and I've always been a Sheamus fan, but ever since his promos started, and now he's clearly going for a rivalry with Chad Gable or Shorty G. Just Sheamus's couple of promos since he's come back over these last couple of weeks have interested me more than 9 or 10 months of trying to build up Cesaro post the bar. And that just shows you that at times it's not always the writing and the creative, which they have their faults, and I'm not, absolving them of any blame here, but sometimes it is just the execution of the wrestlers themselves.
Absolutely, it is. And it's hard on the outside to determine whether or not it's creative or it's the wrestlers coming up assisting with their creative, or it's a combination of both, or if they are handed a script, or if I think it's a case by case on who has more control over their creative. I would assume that tenure has a lot to do with it. Again, it's hard to point the finger. I'm going to go the safe road and say it's a combination of both, and that Cesaro needs to find out who he is, because I know that there is a main eventer in there. I can remember when Cesaro went one-on-one with John Cena in the main event of Raw, I don't know, maybe like 5 years ago, something like 6 years ago, I don't know. And it was just like, you were just like, holy crap, like that was a damn good match. That's what I want from Cesaro. He does his talking in the ring, but that can only get you so far, and he needs to follow up with this. And to put your point on Sheamus, I'm really loving what Sheamus is doing right now. I love that he is, and I don't know if anyone's pointed this out too, but like his body, man, he is toned down. He's cut the fat and up the muscle, or maybe just cut the fat and revealed the muscle a little bit more. But he looks great. He looks to me the best he's ever looked in his career. And yeah, he's back to his 2011 look, but that works. It works for Sheamus. And Sheamus's whole thing, anytime he's been a heel, most times, it has been that he's picking on the shorter guys. He's picking on the little guys, our heroes, as he likes to put it. I like that. I would have liked if WWE didn't beat to death that it's been Shorty G, that, oh my God, he's so small. And like how many times have this joke has been running all fall and now into the winter time? It's dead. I mean, like, enough, right? I'm not into that part of it because it's been killed by everyone. But I do like that Sheamus is pinned with Chad Gable, because I think this is the potential to be a really good match. I'm looking forward to this program. I see Sheamus coming out on top of it. I don't see Chad Gable actually coming out victorious, but he'll put up a good fight as he did with the King of the Ring finals. I'm ultimately looking for Sheamus here, who could be a top heel on SmackDown if he continues to roll, and I think he will. I think he's going to make a big impact in the Royal Rumble and beyond. You ever want to sit down and just get lost in a conversation? The Hex Podcast is the place to go when you're not looking for something specific, you've got time to kill, and you want raw entertainment. To get the full experience, you should check them out on YouTube, but they're also on Spotify, iTunes, and SoundCloud. All you have to do is type in Hex Podcast, Hex Podcast, and it should pop up. So a huge shout out to the team over there at Hex Podcast and Houston himself. This is a one-of-a-kind podcast. Again, check out the Hex Podcast. You guys will be glad you did. A&T Tech provides the latest news from the technology world. They love creating high-quality content for the people interested in tech, all while making it more accessible for people who want short snippets of what's going on. Their small team produces informative articles about the latest gadgets from the biggest companies, our tech basic guides, as well as daily deals. Check out alexandtomstech.com. That's alexandtomstech.com. And you can find them on Twitter at alexandtomstech. I'm a huge techie, guys. I'm big into Apple, and they really do a great job of covering all of this stuff. So head on over and check out alexandtomstech.com.
Yeah, I think Sheamus is one of the most underrated wrestlers of the last decade because he came in, I think it was in 2009 when he showed up. His first Mania match was against Triple H, and rumor has it that he was Triple H's pet project. I'm not sure if that's true, but he was really always one of the top guys there. Like, there was a stretch where he had a lengthy World Heavyweight Championship run after WrestleMania 28, I believe, when he beat Daniel Bryan in 17 seconds or whatever. He had a really under-the-radar but really good program with the Big Show that year, and he had a few good runs as U.S. champion. He was always, like, not to sound cliche, but a good soldier. Like, no matter what program he was in, it was interesting. I always liked his style in the ring. And when they paired him with Cesaro in the summer of 2016, I liked it. It culminated that best of seven series that they had on Raw when Mick Foley was the GM. And I liked them as a pairing, as a tag team. They were my favorite tag team for most of the last 2 or 3 years before they ultimately disbanded. But in saying that, I always felt like there was a bit left in there for Sheamus to have one really solid singles run left in him. Because, like you said, like, he's been around for a long time, and the same with Cesaro, but Sheamus already had a somewhat main event run. He was the WWE champion a few times, like I said, the World Heavyweight champion, but even when he was with the Bar, and I liked the pairing, and I find it really elevated Cesaro, I've always felt that he still has one more main event run left in him, and maybe this could be the kickstart to something, because also touching on the Intercontinental Championship again, if it's not Corbin, I would love to see a program of Sheamus and Braun Strowman.
That would be awesome. I would sign up for that, and yes, I think Sheamus is going to slide very nicely into that IC Championship run, and we've already booked the championship off of Shinsuke. I mean, it's just kind of inevitable. As you said, it's run its course, and Sheamus is an awesome contender for that, and I think could have a long run. I don't believe whenever Strowman gets this, it's going to be holding on to it for very long, unless it's at WrestleMania, in which case those championship wins should stick. I'm of the big belief of that, because it's kind of like hitting your reset button and really sending a message to fans of like what and who you believe could take and have a long run with this, and who they've been building towards most of the last few months. Like that's what I want. I want a long run. But yeah, Sheamus, there's a really limitless places he could go right now, and I don't know if this is technically, or well, I guess in the eyes of fans, that this may be his last shot, but I think he's got a lot of years left in him. I don't think he's too beat up. He took some time off, got his body in shape, healed himself up, looks awesome, and he has, I think, a good 5 years left in him to potentially main event and be a top heel. I'm looking forward to it. I love his style and physicality in the ring too. You kind of touched on that a little, that his in-ring style is one that you can't see through. You can't see through what he does, meaning he works stiff, right? He is just physical. He makes you go, ouch. He makes you almost feel the chops that he does. When he took Shorty G's head off, nearly took it off with a bro kick a couple of weeks ago on SmackDown. He's always just very physical in the ring. That's what I love. He doesn't feel like he's wrestling. He feels like he's fighting, and that's something that I can appreciate.
Yeah, and that's why I've always liked him too, because he also has a kind of complex style for a big man. And I always found that when he fought guys who otherwise kind of looked clunky in the ring, like the later years of the Big Show, Sheamus brought the best out of him because of that fighting-esque style that he had. And now that you talked about it, like how many more years he had left in him, I think that beyond WrestleMania, I think that he could be a challenger for Roman Reigns if Roman Reigns were to win the Universal Championship. Maybe not win the belt from Roman Reigns, but maybe have like a 2-3 long pay-per-view program with each other. You know, they briefly had a feud, I guess it was, like 4 years ago now, when he cashed in Money in the Bank on Roman Reigns after Roman Reigns won it at Survivor Series, but when he formed the League of Nations there. But like that kind of died in the cradle. They didn't have an extended rivalry, and that was always more about Roman versus the Authority. But, you know, even that would be a really cool program between Roman Reigns and Sheamus. Sheamus is just one of those guys that I don't think he's quite to a legacy star type level yet, like a Randy Orton, but he's not that far off, and he carries quite a pedigree.
Yeah, he really does. He is very underappreciated. I mean, I can't believe we've talked this long about Sheamus. I don't think I ever have, but that's not a bad thing. This is good because I've never really broken down what he's done and thought about it as a whole with his entire body of work. There's a lot there, and there's still a lot that could be there. And I don't think he's at the level of Randy Orton, and I think he could be. You could label him as a legacy star at this point because he debuted freaking 10, 11 years ago. He's been here a long time. He's had some good to great matches. We all love his body of work. He feel like he touches the top and then just kind of sinks down, touch the top and sink down. And that's kind of been what his career has been. And not everyone can be at the top for, you know, the forever, and no one can reach the top all the time, and that's fine. But I don't think that we've given Sheamus a fair crack at being a heel champion or really being at the top contender-wise for a long period of time. And you mentioned it, and I think that's a good idea to put Sheamus right into Roman Reigns in terms of his challengers that happened right after WrestleMania. Again, we're all just going under the assumption Reigns is winning the Universal Championship, but also taking it back to win the Rumble, to face The Fiend, and then 2 pay-per-views in between it. But I think that is ultimately what's going to happen. But Sheamus would be a great first opponent for Roman Reigns. As you mentioned, they faced each other 3.5, 4 years ago now, and they could pull on that a little bit. And Sheamus certainly, I think, matched up very nicely back then. So you add 4 years experience, these two could potentially go on till, my God, well, it's not Backlash anymore, but you go for the next couple of pay-per-views, and yeah, Sheamus isn't going to win, but it certainly could be, I think, a really good program. And Sheamus, too, I don't think we've talked about that. On the mic, he's not bad, right? Sheamus has believability on the mic. He has conviction. Has he ever wowed me with a promo? No, but I think given the right program, given the right situation, and the right flexibility, allowing him to just kind of speak as himself, there's something there. But his promo ability, I think, is a bit untapped.
Yeah, and, you know, it just feels like he kind of got the shaft even when he was, quote-unquote, getting pushed, because the year he won the Royal Rumble, he opened up WrestleMania. You know, he was the first match of WrestleMania. I know he was going for the World Heavyweight Championship, but by 2012, the World Heavyweight Championship didn't mean all that much, and that's a whole can of worms that I could rant on for forever. But, you know, once they, you know, abolished that original version of the brand split, the World Heavyweight Championship took a backseat to the WWE Championship. And I understand that year it was kind of messed up because you had The Rock versus John Cena a year in advance to main event WrestleMania 28. And I'm actually not quite sure what the WWE Championship scene was. I know CM Punk was the champion, and I believe he defended it against Chris Jericho in a Chicago street fight. I'm not quite sure, but I'm pretty sure that's what happened at WrestleMania 28. But nevertheless, Sheamus won the Royal Rumble and chose to fight Daniel Bryan for the World Heavyweight Championship, which wasn't the main belt, no matter how bad they try, wasn't the main belt because there was no brand split. And they opened the match, and the match went on for, 10 seconds, not even, 21. And I just found that, yeah, you made him win the Rumble and all that, and he had his WrestleMania moment, but, you know, it really devalued the win of the Rumble, and it was kind of like a half-ass push for the guy. So I feel like there's untapped potential for Sheamus of actually going right to the top.
Hey guys, so retirement may or may not be something that you're really thinking about, but even if you are years and years away, I mean, I'm 20 years away from retirement, but it's something that we should all be thinking about. There's a company that has retirement plans that you can invest in precious metals like gold, silver, and cryptocurrency. There's also a big opportunity to grow retirement and grow income for either your personal or a business. And anyone who signs up at this website receives a free investment kit and gift. So what is this website? It's brightmoneyinvestments.com. That's brightmoneyinvestments.com. You can diversify and grow with metals and cryptos, and you can even talk to someone there to get a better idea of what you should be investing in. So head on over to brightmoneyinvestments.com. Definitely. I mean, the thing is, too, he doesn't have to earn his stripes in front of fans, because he's done that. He's been here long enough. He's certainly, even if you're a heel and people hate you, that doesn't mean that they don't respect you. And the fans, I think, respect Sheamus, even if they think that, oh my God, Sheamus, we've seen it before. But Sheamus I think he has a chance at new life here. And Shorty G is simply a stepping stone. Could he face Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania again, and they pull back to WrestleMania 28 of what happened, and that was a damn tragedy. Although I remember it, that was one of the prominent things I remember from that pay-per-view of Daniel Bryan kissing AJ Lee and then immediately getting bro kicked and losing the championship. That was shocking and certainly noteworthy, and you could love it or hate it. It's kind of akin to Kofi Kingston having that long run and then ultimately losing in 9 or 8 seconds to Brock Lesnar. It's shocking. You don't see it coming. And it divides people a lot on whether you love it or hate it, because you could say, oh, that's so disrespectful. Or you could say, that didn't see that coming. That is a big statement to make to fans of, hey, you thought this was going to be a long match. This is something that we knew that you thought was going to be a long match. It's something of a bit of a swerve to fans, and that it adds the very much needed feeling to the WWE product of anything can happen at any time. That has been missing from the WWE product for I don't know how long, because, and again, this is probably a discussion for a much larger issue, but in general, I used to watch back in, even in the Ruthless Aggression through the PG era to some extent, the CM Punk era to some extent, which ultimately ended up being this PG era, and of course the Attitude Era. All of those times from about 1997 through about 2000, even 2012 to some degree, you had that feeling of anything can happen at any time. I mean, you just never knew what was going to happen. In this case, today's product, I love Raw. SmackDown has improved, but that feeling of you don't know what could happen, who's coming out, what's going to be happening, what the outcome of this match could be, that feeling, for the most part, is gone, and we've just kind of accepted that as fans, which I think is ultimately hurting our emotional investment in the product.
Yeah, I think some of it is attested to social media, but it's also just the product itself, because look at us. Like, it's not normal that pretty much since the Saudi Arabia show Crown Jewel, you and I have been on here saying, well, we're looking forward to the Royal Rumble, but it's going to be Roman Reigns. Like, that shouldn't happen. It should be a what could happen mentality, or like even the Fiend as Universal Champion. Like, I found it's kind of been a lackluster run, but it's just been more out of predictability because, okay, well, The Miz isn't going to beat him, and we know that Daniel Bryan isn't in a position to beat him, and it's just it's lacked, and even on Raw right now, where I love Raw, I think Raw is in the best position it's been in quite some time, and they are upping the ante of, unpredictability, but good unpredictability. But, like, there's even just more of that, well, who is Brock going to fight? But, like, we kind of know who it's going to be. Like, we don't, like you said, like, I miss the days where it could be a group of any 6 guys who can win it. Like, man, I was watching that Royal Rumble from earlier today, like I said, 2001, and Steve Austin ended up winning it, but, The Rock was in that match. Undertaker was in that match. Kane was in that match. Kane set the record, or until Roman Reigns broke it, of most eliminations in a single Royal Rumble match. And there's no instances like that anymore where you could take, a group of 5 or 6 guys and legitimately try and pick which one would win.
No, you don't have that. You have, like, you're right. I think it was all the way back to the Saudi Arabia event. And when we were talking about it, we're like, yeah, well, Roman has been out of the picture for a while. Looks like Roman's winning this Rumble. I mean, we've talked about it, and it's been months and months and months. And that shouldn't be, right? You're right. That should not be the case. But unfortunately, we've kind of just accepted that as fans. We've lowered our standards to, well, that's just looks like what they're doing. So then we'll just kind of just get it over with, just do it, right? Like, that's how I feel right now. I feel as if it's going to be exciting. I'm looking forward to the match. I'm not looking forward to the end of the match. I'm looking forward to the other 95% because that's the part I don't know, right? That's the part that I don't know is what are the interactions going to be with Brock and NXT guys or Brock and Drew McIntyre just teasing different matchups. That's the story I'm looking forward to because I think we all know the end result, right? Oh boy, Roman wins. It's just get it over with, but I'm going to enjoy the journey more than the destination in this case.
Oh yeah, 100%. Because like we've both said, like the product has been very good for the most part. It's just like I wish we thought we were more on the edge of our seats in terms of what the main event to WrestleMania was going to be. And there are some instances where the build justifies the predictability to an extent. Like I remember in 2005, like the build to Batista for Triple H. But that was a build between Triple H and Batista that went all the way back to pretty much since Randy Orton was kicked out of Evolution in the summer of 2004. So although I kind of knew that it was going to culminate in Batista versus Triple H going all the way back to New Year's Resolution that year when they were both in the chamber together, the payoff was so good that I was just like, I don't care that I knew it was coming. I'm here for Batista versus Triple H. But in this instance where we're just expecting The Fiend versus Roman Reigns, it's like, man, these guys haven't even crossed paths in how many years? I think the last time that they had a feud was in 2015. So for over 4 years, these guys have not crossed paths in any capacity, but we're still able to call it 4 months in advance that these guys are in a collision course. That should not be. Like, it's not normal that we are seeing those stars align for two guys that literally haven't seen each other in 4 years.
Yeah, it has been that long. And I think that, and again, look, you don't like being negative on the product. People think I do. I really don't. I love the product and I want to see it improve, but some people think it's just me bitching. But look, I think the problem that we're seeing, the reason that we can call this stuff so damn far in advance is because there's a lack of star power. And I don't think that's I don't think subjective. I think that's a very objective observation that there's just simply a lack of big stars on the roster, on either roster. Yes, you have Brock Lesnar, you have Randy Orton, you have Roman Reigns, you have AJ Styles, but when you have a lack of big stars that you look at and go, man, I don't know, like this is our top guy, but this guy's up and coming. The fans are really getting behind him, and this guy's been here for a long time. It's just Roman Reigns is at the top of the mountain of SmackDown, period. And there's nobody else that the company seems to be looking at that they could put the shoulders of SmackDown on. And as forced as it may be, that's the reality of it. And you talk about, well, back in 2001, you had guys like Undertaker, Triple H, you had Stone Cold, Kane, all these guys in the Rumble that could feasibly win the damn thing. Yeah, but that's also because the star power was off the charts, and that's, to some degree, almost an unfair comparison because of how awesome and big, and it was an all-star roster every single Monday night and every single pay-per-view. So to make that comparison, I love that time back then, and I'm probably going to go watch that Rumble because I forgot how awesome it is. But the thing is that when you have a lack of star power like this, it immediately points to, well, who's their top guy, right? It goes, oh, well, yeah, it's Roman on this show and so on this show, and maybe there's one other dark horse in there that maybe it could be, but ultimately this is nothing more than a reflection of their failure to make a big stars out of their roster. End of story.
Yeah, well, like, just think back to 2001, and, like, the more, like, we talk about it, it seems like this was almost like the peak of wrestling in so many ways in terms of this pure star power on the roster. And I remember at the culmination of the Invasion angle, they had that tournament, that one-night tournament to deem the undisputed champion. And it was Vengeance 2001. And you had The Rock and Jericho, and then you had Angle and Austin. And we all know what happened. Chris Jericho ended up winning the undisputed championship. The least likely of all four. You know, The Rock was the reigning WCW champion. Austin, the reigning WWF champion. Kurt Angle was already, I think, a 2 or 3 time WWF champion by that point, and apparently he was the original choice, and Vince McMahon called an oddball and switched it to Jericho. And you know what? That was an excellent run, and Jericho stood on that leg for so long as the first ever undisputed champion. And look at some of the guys in WWE who could have been that champion at the time. We just riled off Austin, Angle, and The Rock, who were in that match. The Undertaker, The Big Show, and Kane to an extent. You know, Triple H was returning the next month after a knee hiatus, and he ended up winning the Royal Rumble to face Jericho at that year's Mania in the main event. So, like, in an instance where you had guys that you could easily say 4 or 5 guys bona fide ahead of Chris Jericho, you pull the trigger on making Jericho win, and everyone is okay with it because he is that damn good, and the roster is that damn good, and the writing is that damn good, where you can swerve everyone in a good way, and people are actually buying in not just because you swerve them, but because it's believable. You know, you just don't see that anymore.
You don't. And those are calculated risks. And that is one that I remember watching going, are you effing kidding me, Chris Jericho? I remember being so mad. But at the same time, I'm like, that's freaking brilliant. Because now there was so much heat on Jericho. And I remember a promo after he beat Austin and Rock in the same night, which he has, as you said, he stood on that for years, and rightfully so, because nobody else can say that he beat Austin and The Rock in the same night. His promo, it might have been the Monday Night Raw after, he was sitting by a pool with the two championship belts next to him and bragging about what he did. And I'm like, somebody needs to whip this guy's ass. And that's the feeling I want. That's the calculation or the risk that Vince took on that call. And it was ended up being a brilliant call. Loved it, but hated it. I hated to love it. It's kind of a weird feeling, but when you have that feeling of wanting to see the guy get his ass kicked, that's what you want. That's selling tickets. That's people buying the network. I loved it. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that. But, man, that was freaking 19 years ago. It's insane. But, yes, loved it. Something like that, though, would it happen in 2020? I don't think so. The WWE feels so controlled, and it's a much different world now. It's just such a micromanaged backstage area. And again, this has been verified by several guys who leave the company, and John Moxley's Exhibit A of what the culture is backstage, and it's extremely micromanaged. And to have them do something that risky, to put somebody that nobody expects in that position, we could talk about it and I would love it, but I don't think WWE has the balls to do it.
And look, that's not to say that everything WWE did back then was, paid off in spades. Like we just said, I loved when Jericho first won the title, but it wasn't the best WrestleMania of all time. I think that main event of Jericho versus Triple H was one of the most underwhelming main events, especially given the fact that it followed The Rock and Hulk Hogan, which for all intents and purposes is what people remember WrestleMania 18 about. And for me, I think that they kind of missed an opportunity there by having Austin versus Triple H at a Mania one-on-one. I think that's what it should have been, especially given the fact that Stone Cold Steve Austin was, just kind of thrown to the wayside and forgotten in a throwaway match with Scott Hall at that year's WrestleMania. I really think that for a WrestleMania type moment, they would have been best served having it Austin versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, just because I didn't think Triple H versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, or at least include Steve Austin in the match and make it triple threat. So I think WWE is just so afraid to maybe look back on a moment like that where they made a risky move and put it on Jericho. And while the payoff was great, some of the immediate effects of looking back in hindsight, an underwhelming WrestleMania match, main event match, maybe scares them off from doing it again.
It probably does. Boy, you're bringing back some memories now with 18. That is what we all remember Mania for. Hogan Rock. Hogan Austin, don't even get me started. Hogan Rock, it happened, and you know what? It worked. It worked. And it's amazing that you can have a match that people remember for the ages that was nothing more than a slow motion move for move type of methodically paced match. And it's amazing that is the type of match that people look back and go, oh my God, the match was awesome. But when you look at the athleticism, the lack of in that match, I mean, obviously due to Hogan's limitations, it's just so funny that today's standards have changed so dramatically to what people deem, quote, a 5-star match. But when you have two massive stars that make every move count, I actually oftentimes prefer that because it's not so damn fast-paced and I can understand what's happening versus today's 450 splash insanity spot match. But again, to your point about also the rest of the card, the fact that Austin and Triple H never had a WrestleMania match is actually surprising considering how awesome some of their feuds were and how long some of them run. It just never happened across into Mania. I remember the Jericho Triple H match for really one thing of Triple H finally getting his hands on Stephanie at the time when they were in a program against one another and him finally pedigreeing Stephanie McMahon, if I recall correctly. So that I'll remember that, and yes, that throwaway match with Hall. I remember that whole deal. Like, what are they doing with Austin? This is their top guy, and it's with Scott Hall. Like, why not Hogan? I kept saying that. Why not Hogan? And yes, he ended up stunning Scott Hall 40 times, and he stunned Kevin Nash and drank some beer, and it felt nothing more than kind of like not a WrestleMania moment, but even a Monday Night Raw or a Backlash or maybe a SummerSlam type of moment. But it did not feel right. And obviously we know what the rest of the history is that Austin was burned out. He actually left the night after that and skipped Raw, and then obviously the walkout with Brock Lesnar that followed in the coming months. But man, yeah, you're bringing me back.
Yeah, I just remember that Mania, the card, because even Kurt Angle, he had a match with Kane. The Undertaker had a heel Undertaker when he had just turned heel, and he had that street fight with Ric Flair. And it just seemed like you had a lot of good wrestlers still in their primes. Obviously, Austin on the back end of that, but you couldn't have done Austin versus Taker or Austin versus Angle, and that Austin Angle had a really big rivalry in 2001 leading up to 2002. And it just felt like it was all centered around Rock and Hogan, and everything else would just follow suit, and how the chips fell is how it would be. And it seemed like WrestleMania 18 was booked a lot like how WrestleMania 32 was, where everything was centered around Triple H and Roman Reigns and getting Roman Reigns over in the main event, and everything else just took backseat to it. And it was even more so odd that they main evented with Triple H and Chris Jericho, and it was a fine match, and it was weird seeing Triple H as the babyface, going over and winning the Undisputed Championship after years of being arguably the top heel. But, it was just you couldn't have done Austin Triple H, or you couldn't have done Austin Undertaker, and you couldn't have done Austin Angle because, Austin didn't have, for all that he was amazing and he was, in my mind, the best of all time, outside of The Rock, he didn't really have a high-profile WrestleMania match besides The Rock and Shawn Michaels. He had the submission match and the iconic match with Bret Hart, but that was a mid-card match, so it's just you had the trifecta with The Rock, you had the initial title victory over Shawn Michaels, but given how over he was and he missed WrestleMania 16, WrestleMania 18 just seemed like a missed opportunity with guys like Taker, Angle, or in my mind the most ideal choice, Triple H in the main event.
No doubt about it. It was just an unfortunate waste of a moment for Austin. Nobody ever talks about it. Nobody talks about, remember the Austin match with Scott Hall. And no disrespect to Scott Hall, but Austin doesn't need Scott Hall in that match. That it didn't make a whole lot of sense. And man, people clamor for Austin Hogan. And I just say to them, and even Austin says, and he had Hogan on his podcast and asked him why we never did business together. And Austin said he wasn't in the right headspace. And he wasn't, he kind of regrets it, but he doesn't know if that would have been the case, if it would have come out to be a good match because of their styles. And that, again, for whatever, when he says headspace, I'm assuming that he was all effed up from, I don't know, whatever divorce he was on, or that, he was frustrated with creative and things like that. So, you know what, maybe it's better left to our imaginations in video games rather than actually having it come out, because Hogan and Rock certainly tore the house down with just their pacing and telling a story inside the ring. But all right, well, back to the current product. A couple more things I wanted to ask you about before we close things out is, well, I don't know how we didn't talk about this yet, and I haven't gotten your opinion. What do you think about Buddy Murphy joining this group, this yet unnamed group with Monday Night Messiah and the AOP?
Well, I think everything about the Monday Night Messiah is amazing. I think this is the best Seth Rollins has been ever, and that's saying something given how big of a rock star he was for pretty much all of 2018 and 2019. He feels the most natural in this role. Everything feels organic. And I love the fact that Buddy Murphy is now going to get the rub from Seth Rollins. Obviously, we've seen them together for 7 minutes in total of on screen. But the first thing I saw when I looked at these two standing beside each other, and the way that Buddy Murphy was kind of almost looking up and ideal, mesmerizing over Seth Rollins, I was just like, man, this could be a Triple H Randy Orton thing 2.0. And obviously I'm jumping way ahead of the game here. But I mean, it feels like an evolution type thing where, you have the vet and Triple H grooming the young lion, his predecessor. And I just think that this is the type of faction that's been missing from WWE for a long, long time. You have the established bona fide star, you have the hired henchmen, the heavies, and then you have an up-and-comer who's getting groomed by the legit star. And obviously that's a tall task to expect of Rollins and Murphy to fall in the steps of Triple H and Randy Orton. But I think given how good Rollins has been over the last 2 years, how good his current character is as the Monday Night Messiah, and how much untapped potential Buddy Murphy has, I could see something in the future along those lines.
This could be one of the best moves that Monday Night Raw makes, is bringing Buddy Murphy in. Obviously, Seth Rollins, the transition to back to heel and aligning with the AOP. Monday Night Messiah. He's really just, all gears are clicking right now. We're cooking with gas, and I'm loving it. We do. I think the fans do. And the key is here too, what I love is that the fans don't love it so much that they're cheering, because he's not a cool heel. He's a guy that are legitimately just kind of disgusted that he never quite fit as a baby face. He was forcing it with the Wii stuff and just too much of the kumbaya, the fans are, you guys supported me, all this nonsensical crap that never fit Seth Rollins' character. You bring Buddy Murphy in, a guy that can work his ass off, had 3 stellar matches with Aleister Black, and Aleister Black's going places as well. But for Seth Rollins to pick up a guy like Buddy Murphy, I think you could say that he sees himself in Buddy Murphy, because Buddy Murphy is a guy that he could work with anyone. He could tell a story with anyone. How good he is in the ring, people haven't even seen yet. And I am a huge fan of this. His faction continues to grow. There's rumors about a 5th member joining. I would stop at 5 personally, because it starts to get watered down. I alluded to that in the first Nexus invasion. While it was cool and everything else and new and fresh and oh my God, who are these guys? It got a little watered down because you start to lose the individual identities of each guy, and everyone just kind of becomes a collective one. And I don't like that. I like every guy to have their own identity and their own personality and be unique. And so if they're going to add a 5th, fine, but I would stop there. I'm interested to see what they name the group. There has to be some kind of name. I haven't heard any rumors on that yet of what it could be. But Buddy Murphy, the addition here, I think it's perfect. This is also Seth's time to shine as a true leader, and not kind of co-leaders that he was in the Shield, or with the Authority being with J&J, which were nothing more than kind of just 2 middle schoolers at your back. This is truly Seth at his best, leading a group, holding hopefully a championship, and holding it for a long time, ultimately to just create new stars, which is the focus and goal of most groups or even tag teams, is to create new single stars. And I hope that this is beneficial not just for Seth to take him to the moon, but also for Buddy Murphy, who in his loss now had the biggest night of his career joining Seth's group.
Yeah, and I'm with you, and that's just a further reason as to why I think Seth still should have been the Universal Champion, because I think that Seth still holding that belt, carrying that, the world title of Raw, and not playing second fiddle to Brock as the top heel on the brand would have just even added more legitimacy to this group. Like, I always think back to the days where Triple H had the World Heavyweight title, Flair and Batista had the tag team titles, and Orton had the Intercontinental Championship. And I could have seen that, if Buddy Murphy won the U.S. Championship. But I don't know. I just really, when I looked at that group, them all staying there today, I was just on Monday Night Raw, I just said to myself, like, man, Seth wasn't ready to drop that Universal Championship yet. He still had more time in him, especially if he was going to turn heel. And now that you kind of know that he's not going to be getting the WWE Championship for obvious reasons. He had his lengthy program with Brock, and the next person to take it off Brock will probably be a babyface, and then they'll have a lengthy run. So knowing that Seth won't be a world champion for at least probably another 10 to 12 months does kind of damper it a bit. And I'm kind of like, that sucks given all the momentum they've had. But aside from that, I just think it's awesome that Seth has, an up-and-comer and these heavies in AOP. And like you said, it's a chance for Seth to lead by himself, not sharing the spotlight with either Triple H or Roman Reigns or Dean Ambrose. And as for the fifth member, I think that the only kind of person you could add is another heavy. Like, when I heard about that, the first guy that came to my mind was Eric Rowan, just because you see how effective Rowan could be in a henchman-type role. And then they put him on his own, and I just think he's irrelevant. And on a side note, I just think his music absolutely sucks. But besides Eric Rowan, a guy like that who doesn't have a lot of depth to his character and could just be another heavy for the group, I don't really see a point in adding another guy.
I agree, and I want this to breathe a little bit with Buddy Murphy. I want him to get the spotlight of, and also have maybe Charlie Caruso come in and ask him, well, why did you join Seth? I want to know why. I want to know what his motivation was. I want to know what drew him and attracted him to Seth Rollins, because then you get an inner working of the brainwashing that Seth is doing and makes you disdain him even more. So I would give this time to breathe and let Buddy Murphy get time to tell fans why he did what he did, even for a couple of weeks before adding another member. I don't want it to just be the NWO at the end of its run where, half the roster was on the NWO and it just became watered down nonsense. I want this to make sense, have a purpose, and I want mission statements of why you're doing what you're doing. I don't think that's too much to ask. So I'm really looking forward to this. This has given Buddy Murphy a shot in the arm, as we talked about over the summer, with him having an amazing match with Roman Reigns and saying this could be a launching point, and then having Aleister Black and Buddy Murphy tear the house down at TLC, and then their following subsequent two matches. And we said, oh, and even after he lost, I said, oh, where the hell is Buddy Murphy going? And he just hung out at ringside and hung out and stared and just sat there. And I said, this is interesting, right? Well, what the hell is going on? And come to find out, he low blows the Big Show and joins Seth, and we're off to the races, man. There's so much potential, and the best thing happening on Monday Night Raw is Seth and the AOP, and now Buddy Murphy. So this is something I look forward to. This is just great writing, great execution by all parties involved so far. I have nothing negative to say about Seth and this group and the progression of this story. So, and as far as Seth holding a belt, yeah, if you look at the traditional structure of how this could play out, because as you said, with Brock dropping into a babyface, which is, who knows at this point at WrestleMania? Say it's Kevin Owens, right? Then you have to have that championship stick for a good 3 to 4 months minimum with a WrestleMania win, which means Seth is looking at 6 months minimum to get the belt. But WWE has funky writing. WWE has funky ways of getting the championship to who they want, whether it's via their overused triple threat rules or some other kind of nonsensical shenanigans. There are ways to get the belt to who they want, and I don't think they'll wait too long post-WrestleMania, maybe a month or 2 months, to get the belt on Seth, because I think he could have an amazing run as the champion with all this backup. I mean, that storyline writes itself.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, now that you brought up triple threat, like maybe that's where they're angling towards for Mania because, I really have no idea where Brock Lesnar is going. I thought that it could be Kevin Owens, but now I'm starting to think like, man, he kind of lost a bit of steam and he's still kind of entrenched with Seth Rollins. And at this juncture, I would kind of expect him to fight Seth Rollins in a long, drawn-out one-on-one match at WrestleMania, but maybe it's them two against Brock Lesnar in a triple threat match for the WWE Championship. I just think that I like Brock as champion, and that's the problem here where I would have liked Brock on one show as world champion and Seth on the other. And that's why I'm kind of torn here because I'm one of the few that really enjoys Brock as champion because he brings legitimacy to the product, like an actual ass kicker, and I do find him entertaining. Even, sometimes his shtick of coming with Paul Heyman and bouncing around and Paul Heyman talks. But even this week, the R-Truth segment was awesome. I found that hilarious. So I'm a sucker for Brock. Maybe it's a nostalgia thing. So I'm not clamoring for Seth to be the world champion for that. But at the same time, I much rather have had Brock on SmackDown and The Fiend not having the Universal Championship, which sucks because I was such a big fan of The Fiend, but I don't know. I feel like they pulled the rug out too quick from Seth Rollins, and it felt like that was going to happen as soon as he got put on into that program with The Fiend. But like you said, they have wacky ways to get back the world title on Seth, which probably will be sooner rather than later for all the points you just brought up. It just sucks that it will have to come at the expense of Brock Lesnar.
It will, but Brock tends to go away after WrestleMania anyway. I mean, that kind of seems to be Brock's schedule. He's got the dream schedule of being paid millions and working part-time, but he's earned it. And I love Brock as champion, too. I don't know why. I do know why. I understand why people don't like Brock as champion, because it's the same old tired argument. Oh, he's a champion, but he's never here. He's the absentee champion. Oh, I'm tired of seeing him with the belt. Who else would you want to be in a main event in terms of star value, legitimate credentials, presence, than Brock Lesnar? You can't make an argument for anyone else. No one even comes close. And especially if you're trying to establish that next person as a legitimate guy and could hold and carry the belt and carry the ball, so to speak, down the field for the next 6 months, what better person to have them beat than Brock Lesnar? That stamps them as a legitimate champion rather than just kind of a fluke or whatever. That's the best guy to have the belt to make the next guy is Brock Lesnar. So I have no problem with him being champion. I have no problem with him not being there every week. That's the way wrestling used to be. When you didn't have the champion there every week, that's fine with me. I don't need them there every week. And I'm glad that they haven't totally overdone The Fiend that I knew that they were tempted to do, because when WWE finds something that works, they go, ooh, do it more and more and more, and the fans love it, so let's give it to him. And then the fans go, oh, well, we've seen this. He was on SmackDown last week. Okay. It starts to lose its value. So I'm fine with Brock not being there every week. But one last thing I wanted to touch on with you is the whole women's division. We haven't even talked about that. What's your take? And I know that we talked a little bit about this last week, but we had this week Lacey Evans faced Bayley in what I thought was a very solid match. Lacey Evans, from where she was to where she is now, is extremely she seems to be extremely focused on her in-ring improvements, and I think we're seeing that. She has, I think, come a long way from where she was, not to where she needs to be yet, but has certainly improved vastly. And I enjoyed her match with Bayley. She goes on to beat Bayley and now gets a women's championship match at the Royal Rumble. And I have mixed feelings about this because I'm still not completely sold on Lacey Evans being a babyface. I'm not a big fan of what they've done with Bayley post her turn, which is honestly nothing, which is the problem. And she feels kind of like an illegitimate champion, as she seems to lose every single time she's in the ring. Well, I'm excited for the quality of the match. I'm a bit concerned about the character building of both women. What's your take on this? Plus Sasha into this whole thing.
Well, I've said that I didn't really like how Sasha has just become, Bayley's sidekick after when she returned. She said, I'm the face of the women's division. I'm the best here and this and that. But now she's subsequently playing second fiddle to Bayley. I like Lacey Evans. I liked her as soon as she debuted and started coming out last year. The babyface turn has been, it's been a work in progress, but I'm starting to come around to it. They're playing on real life accolades of her being a Marine, which always gets over with the crowd, and, being a mother, and they play on that. I think that it hasn't gotten enough hype, this program, for me to really care about it and treat it like a true championship match, like compared it to the counterpart show Raw, and how great that they've built up Becky versus Asuka. And to be honest, I was so sick of Becky throughout the summer. I hated her. But now they've really pulled her back in. They've reined her in. She's not as cocky. She's just more real. And it's kind of, she's back to the way she was that got her over in the first place, at least in my estimation. She isn't fighting every week, which I don't need to see from the champion. And, and it's drawn me in. And I'm really looking forward to Asuka versus Becky for both in-ring match quality and for the story itself. Well, on SmackDown, you have Bayley and Lacey, and while I think the max quality is quality is gonna be good, I'm not really sold on. I don't think that Lacey has a legitimate chance to win. I really think that the hype around it is really down, and I think it's just kind of like a placeholder program until they get to the eventual WrestleMania program with Bayley. I don't know what they're going to do with it. An early prediction for Mania, maybe an opponent for Bayley could be Alexa Bliss. But I don't know. The SmackDown women's division has been kind of taking a hit as of late.
It has. It's taken second fiddle to Raw, and it's because it's just a weird dynamic. You have this heel that is easily dislikable in Lacey Evans, who, and we talked about this last week, I think, too, is that she hasn't changed anything since she became a heel, other than going over the top with talking about being a mom and trying to be relatable there, and then bringing up her military background everywhere she can and doing salutes, and Michael Cole going through her her resume of being in the military and what she did. She was in the military police, and she was involved in special forces, all this stuff, which is of course admirable, and that's great, and I know why they hid that as a heel and you bring it up as a babyface. It just feels very heavy-handed that they're now just like mentioning it every chance they get, and I know they're trying to get her over. I'm still not completely on board with Lacey Evans as a babyface. I don't hate it. It's just taking time, and I'm willing to give it a chance. But I'm more concerned, not for Lacey Evans, because she has a long career ahead of her. I'm more concerned about what they've done with Bayley and Sasha post-turns. I've said this, and I continue to say it, because what they've done is nothing. They've done nothing with their turns other than just turn them and hope the turn itself continues to just self-perpetuate and self-propel, and it's not, because they're not doing anything. They've just mildly, or not mildly, but they've made Bayley this just kind of lukewarm champion of, yeah, she's turned heel, she cut her hair, a couple people made fun of it, she's holding the belt, but they don't make an actual effort, a transparent effort to put heat on her, make people really dislike her. They haven't had that. I don't know why, because as a heel, you want to be disliked, not just for changing your haircut and your music. Give us something on a weekly basis to dislike you by, and they haven't done that. Other than, maybe she'll occasionally mention Lacey Evans' daughter. Okay, well, that's a little bit of a tired formula. Give us something in ring that we don't like. Cut a nasty promo. Get ferocious. But they don't do anything. That's my whole problem, is the follow-up to this Lacey Evans and Sasha Banks heel turn is, honestly, layman's terms, been piss poor, and that's my problem.
Well, and I think it's mostly because they haven't given her a legitimate opponent that the fans care about. Like, since they did this brand split, her main opponents for the most part have been Lacey Evans, who was a heel that was kind of thrusted into a babyface role, and Dana Brooke. No one gives a shit about Dana Brooke in any, big capacity. Sorry, I didn't mean to swear there. But like nobody really cares about Dana Brooke. No one, cared about Lacey Evans in a babyface role. Now they're slowly starting to come around, but all the top most liked babyface women are on Raw. You have Becky Lynch there, you have Charlotte there, even Natalia, who, she's maybe a bit stale, but at least she carries a pedigree and is the veteran and is always a formidable opponent. I think it's more to do with the lack of legit competitors on SmackDown for Bayley and Sasha to go against than it is them, because I liked their heel turns separately, but I thought it was a mistake pairing them together, putting them on the same show for this very reason, because now if you look at maybe the grand scheme of things heading towards WrestleMania, what do you do with these two? The most logical option would be to have them face each other at WrestleMania, because they haven't ever done that. But what, you're going to turn one of them babyface again after turning heel less than 6 months before? They've kind of booked themselves into the corner here. I mean, after Lacey Evans, I don't even know who they're going to pit Bayley up against. I can't see Lacey Evans actually winning the title at Royal Rumble. And that's why, maybe Alexa Bliss, but even beyond those two, who is a babyface woman on SmackDown that could go up against Bayley? And that's why I think the crowd just hasn't really felt heat towards Bayley, because they haven't put her up against a fan favorite.
They haven't, and maybe it's a returning Naomi who could come out and face Bayley, but this whole thing, Alexa Bliss to me would be the candidate at this point. She should be the next in line. But I honestly don't know. I don't know who Bayley could compete against, and I don't want it to be Sasha, as you just alluded to. It shouldn't be. We don't need another Sasha Bayley program. Please, for the love of God. But when we have this level of uncertainty, in the past, what happens is, and you look at booking in WWE in the last year, 2 years, honestly, in the last 5 years, when you have this much uncertainty and there's no clear-cut next opponent, what does WWE do? They lean on the booking crutch of multi-person matches. That's what I think is going to happen at WrestleMania for the Women's Championship. And last year you could say, oh, they did the triple threat for the women in the main event. Well, that's because they forced Charlotte in so that they could say that she was in the first main event ever for the women. Just because they felt Charlotte was that level of a talent, they just stuck her in there, even though it was really Ronda and Becky's program. And this year, you could do the same thing for the SmackDown, but for a different reason, because there's no clear-cut front runner for the championship. So I could see a multi-women match, triple threat, fatal four-way elimination, whatever. But to me, and I'll just close on that, is I think that could be what's happening, is when there's no clear cut, you go to a triple threat, because that's just what WWE does.
Well, and to be fair though, even though it's their own mistake, but to be fair, what else can they do? If Ronda Rousey returns, she's going to Raw, and then she's going to fight Becky in a rematch, or quote unquote rematch, because like you said, Charlotte was in that match. But, Charlotte's on Raw, Asuka's on Raw. There's no real big level name female wrestler for Bayley to go up against. Alexa Bliss is the only one, but even her, I don't know why they pulled the plug on her as a main event female wrestler. Maybe her injuries have, limited her ability to fight in singles competition. But I'm looking up and down the SmackDown women's roster, and maybe Mandy Rose, but she's still entrenched in that Otis angle, and I don't think they could skyrocket her up the ranks that fast. And I think it will be what you just said. Maybe a triple threat with Becky, Bayley, Sasha, and Alexa Bliss. I really don't know what they're going with here. And as a result, you're maybe going to see Charlotte and Asuka be put in throwaway matches. I just feel like they loaded up the women's division way too hard on the Raw side. You've alluded to it a bunch of times that Charlotte has been in a holding pattern. Maybe they have something bigger planned for her, like a Shayna Baszler or something for WrestleMania in a cross-branded match. That would make sense to me. And then you have Becky and Charlotte and a returning Ronda. But again, then that still leaves the SmackDown Women's Champion on the back burner. And it's too bad, because you're going to see Bayley suffer from it when what was originally a really good heel turn.
Yeah, you're going to see Bayley, to me, is going to be the victim here, and it's not fair to Bayley. And you said, well, what else could they do? And, well, I mean, what you do is either A, you could propose a trade, you could bring somebody from NXT to the roster, or you could just take a chance and try to build around somebody that you feel could be the next big babyface. I mean, you just take a chance. That's what it always is taking a chance at who that next person could be. And, I know that there's limited time between now and Mania, but take a chance. You're always taking chances. Let's see what they can do instead of having the crutch of multi-person matches, which to me, I'm not of the mindset that the main events of WrestleMania, the title matches, should be triple threats. I love one-on-ones. To me, that's what it should be, and it always should be at WrestleMania, not always as a whole. But to me at WrestleMania, because that's your end-all be-all, that is the end game that you've been building towards all year, and it should be wrestler A against wrestler B, and oftentimes it's A, B, C, and D, and A and B and C, and they just do that so much to get everybody on the show, to make sure that it's as long of a show as possible. I'm not the fan or the mindset of belief of that. But anyway, anything else that we didn't touch on or that you wanted to follow up on?
Well, just because I won't talk to you before then, I pretty much know who you think for the men's, because we've talked about it ad nauseum for 2 months, but who are your two favorites or picks or early predictions to win each Royal Rumble?
So this is not an exciting pick for the men's. Obviously, I have, again, Kevin Owens and Roman Reigns, top two in the men's. And in the women's, I have somebody that's not even currently on the roster of Ronda Rousey. This is my number one. I think she has a strong chance of returning at the Rumble and then challenging Becky Lynch at WrestleMania to get her revenge on Becky Lynch. Again, I could be way off and she has no interest in coming back, but to me, that makes the most sense. On the SmackDown side, I don't know of anybody, but on the NXT side, you could have somebody coming in. You could have Shayna Baszler. There are women on the NXT roster that could transfer themselves up to SmackDown to face Bayley. And I think that an NXT, Shayna Baszler is probably my number two. I really think that could be the case. And so those are my top two.
Yeah, I'm with you. For me, I think it's a foregone conclusion that it's going to be Roman. But if I have to pick another favorite, I'm going to go with Drew. I don't know. It's probably me more of a fanboy, but I think that just how they've been booked recently, I could see that Drew maybe being a dark horse, or I think he's at minimum going to be a big impact in the Rumble. And on the women's side, a part of me wants to say Charlotte because she hasn't won it yet, and we know what the WWE higher-ups think of her, but I don't think that she could really challenge Becky again. Hope to God not. So for that reason, I don't have her. I think the favorite is Ronda Rousey, like you, and Shayna Baszler would be my second pick as well. But one dark horse that I don't actually see them pulling the trigger on, but who maybe could entice them to at least make some noise and shine in the Rumble is Mandy Rose.
Yes, I could see that absolutely being the case. I think that Vince has had his eye, literally and figuratively, on Mandy Rose for quite some time. And yeah, I think she can win the Rumble? No, but she can make an impact. She could maybe be one of the final four. Mandy Rose is somebody that you need to keep your eye on, and I'm sure to the most straight males listening to me is not going to be a problem. But literally, we should keep an eye on her because she has been somebody that's slowly rising on the SmackDown prominence, and somebody that I think will sneak her way into the title picture, maybe even as kind of the fourth wheel in a multi-women match if the SmackDown Women's Championship is defended at the next few pay-per-views before Mania. I don't expect her to win the SmackDown Women's Championship, but I think she'd be a great heel champion. There's certainly some possibility, there's some potential there, but I don't think she's ready yet. I don't need to see it. I don't need it rushed. But I think in 2020, sometime in 2020, we will see a Mandy Rose championship run, and I'm all for it. I think that could be a cool deal. So, listen, Anthony, great talking with you, and I know that we are scheduled tentatively to do a massive all hands on deck co-hosted show for the post Royal Rumble show, which is either going to be taking place on Monday or Tuesday following. So, man, I'm really looking forward to that. But before, let everyone know how they can get in touch with you if they want to.
You can get in touch with me at ADemarco25 on Twitter, and I just hope you like hockey if you plan on following me.
Absolutely, and looking forward to a week from tomorrow or a week from Tuesday, being able to get all troops on board and be able to discuss what is going to be, I have that feeling, an extremely noteworthy, probably slightly rant-filled, but also praiseworthy show of the Royal Rumble. That just is the WWE product in 2020. So I'm looking forward to it, and we will be talking very, very soon, I'm sure.
Yep, Matt, talk then and enjoy the Rumble.
All right, yeah, you too. Take care.